having the attitude of continuing to raise the bar, continuing to get better and staying ahead of the curve, right? And just continuing to say, hey, listen, we're going to stay the best, but that's why you stay the best. And that's why you are the best and why it's always booked.
Hi, I'm Wyatt. And I'm Grace. And you're listening to Our Dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore, and we're back with our Experts Corner Friday interviews with short-term rental investors operating at the top of their game, willing to share the ups, the downs, and everything in between on their journey into short-term rental investing. Today, we've got Mark and Melissa Crawford joining us from Des Moines, Iowa. Welcome, guys. Appreciate you joining me.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Shawn.
Absolutely. So, hey, I want to... Yep, absolutely. I want to dive into you guys, I always love the entire journey, right? And I want to, you guys are, before we hit record, I said, I want to talk about, you've got a couple properties. One of them happens to be a glamping property with a glamping tent set up and that whole experience that you've been doing since 2021. And I really want to dive into that because that's a hot topic. We get a lot of questions about that. I know our listeners are excited about that. But before we dive into all that stuff, I want to dive into the backstory. I love to get the kind of the background. It's always interesting to me, interesting to our listeners on where you come from, what pays the bills, what got you interested in short-term rental investing in the first place, and then we'll talk about the path of operating toward the top of those markets because you guys are part of our 1% club. I just saw you in Utah a few months ago. Now it's been a few months now, but it was you're kind of rarefied air operating in the top 1% of the markets you guys are operating in, and so we want to talk about all that. But let's start with the backstory.
Well, we kind of we started with Airbnb quite a few years ago, just renting out our house. And kind of saw the benefit there and then moved to a different property, which is where we currently live. And it's 7 acres and trees and kind of in the middle of Des Moines. It feels like you're in the country, but you're in the middle of Des Moines. And so we knew we had something there that we could do something with. And so thought about a tiny home. And when we looked at the planning and zoning and regulation and the cost to build all that, it was just really not in the cards at the time. And then Mark had seen some glamping tents online and threw out that idea. And he's just a guy that goes for stuff and got excited and started building it. So that's my main work is we self-manage, but I can let Mark share what he does.
Yeah. So thanks again, Shawn. So yeah, Melissa summarized it really well, but we were like looking at all these different options and I was like, well, what can we do? Like, how can we, dip our toe in this water, right? Of this glamping thing. And no one else was doing it around here in Des Moines. So we were the first ones to kind of do it per se here in the Des Moines area. And I saw the things out in the state parks and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And what's the one out in Utah? Like Canvas Under the Stars? Under Canvas. Yeah. So, yeah. And I was like, wow, that's kind of neat. I'm like, how can we do this? And how can we make this happen? I think this would go well. And if it doesn't, it's not a huge investment, right? But it's pretty cool. So it's gone well. So, I've never done anything like it before. So I built a platform, got online, found a tent and bought it. And we wrangled in one of our friends to help us design it, the inside of it. And then Melissa's, like she said, she self-manages it. I have a full-time job and outside of the Airbnb stuff. So, but before that, we had a software business that we were into. So,
nice. Any other real estate investing in the past?
No, not real estate investing. No. Yeah. No. But we
so you bought the property with acreage, and that's where that kind of got you interested, thinking, "Hey, we've got 7 acres. We've got some place to spread out, and what can we do with it to maximize it?" So we, looked into a couple different options with tiny homes, things like that. The glamping looked like a smaller entry point. You're like, hey, let's dip our toes in and try to, check this out. And it was in 2021. So this stuff was getting really, really popular at that time too. Right. And so as you navigated through even the right, tent setup and everything else, like walk me through, if you don't mind, just rough costs of what it takes to get into that type of a setup. And then, because I get asked the question all the time, and people are always like, hey, what do you think about this? I said, it can be a really good option because one, your cash on cash return can be really high, frankly, because you're buying a property. If you already own the land, you're buying the glamping tent way cheaper than like a tiny home or building another home. Right. And then you've got the, cool setup. It's fairly popular right now. So you can get a pretty nice return on that investment. But I've never known really what the investment is. I've looked at it across the board online and probably the process you guys went through. And it feels like the costs are all over the place when I try to figure out like, what is that really going to cost you to set that up?
Yeah, I can talk to that. So, so some things we had to do, I didn't have a lot of the tools and all that stuff. So we had to run electrical out to the property or out to the area on the property. We had to run water out there. We had to set a propane tank out there because we have an outdoor shower. So we have like an outhouse that's whatever, not your typical outhouse, but it's but we don't have septic out there. So it's like composting toilet, hot water, electricity, air conditioner, all those things. So that was a pretty big expense because we had to get a heavier duty like power line ran to our house in order to help, to feed all that power going out.
Pull it out there.
So,
yep.
So that was a whole thing to kind of figure out. But yeah, I built the deck, enlisted some buddies. I've never built the deck before. Got on Menards, and got some plans and, figured that out. And then, but all in all, like with tools, the boring, propane tank, everything, what it was like $30,000.
Yeah.
So, but that was back in 2021 too. So price gone up significantly, but yeah, we had an ROI on that in a year and a half.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. And so like, so when you launched it, when you put it, was it hard to put together as far as like you guys get snow out there in Des Moines? You just told me it's a snow day today. So does it shut down for the winter season as well?
Yeah. Yeah. We're only open from April through
October, sometimes beginning of November, kind of.
Yeah.
That year, at that time of year.
Yeah. And so when you do, so you're operational, do you shut it down? Do you pull the tent down or do you leave it up through the winter?
So we've talked about that a little bit. We were like, what are we going to do? And it's a bear. I don't know how these hunters do this, like tear these things down out in Montana and stuff like that. But yeah, we just leave it up. So we've had one snafu with that kind of, you're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that would be kind of the ugly. We had a ton of snow. And we were down in Mexico on vacation, but before it snowed really heavy here in Iowa, it frozen rain, like ice. It rained like ice or something crazy. So there was like a thick layer of ice on everything, and then the snow came, and then it collapsed the tent. So I mean, there wasn't anybody in there or anything. It was empty, right? But we had to get new poles. We had to get new poles for it, and then put it back up. So.
Yeah. So are you, so as you said, you got an ROI on it almost instantly, right? So then you start getting a pretty nice return on that investment. And was 2021, was it actually operational or was 2022 your first summer operational?
We got it available July of 21. So we just had a short season for 21.
Yeah.
Yeah. But did it pretty fast. I mean, it's not like a build process where it's going to take you, 12 months to get a home built or, set up and everything else put together.
Yeah, big time.
So 2022, 2023, in 2024, we've got 3 seasons under our belt. So talk to me about kind of navigating because there's different things you got to consider. Like you mentioned, you don't have sewer out there. You got a composting toilet. You've got power and you've got water. And so people, they're coming out for the glamping experience, but how much of it do you have to like really like set them up, the guest, and set expectations that, hey, this isn't a hotel room, right? Or this isn't an actual house with all this different stuff? Or do they pretty much already know that?
I think they're expecting it. Yeah. I don't think they're expecting, I mean, I try and put good pictures on the listing. That said, I do not have pictures of the composting toilet on the listing, but I talk about it on there. So I think they go in fairly aware. No one's ever been sad about it. If anything, they are really happy about our outdoor shower. Like, that's an amenity that they really like. It sits on the back of our outhouse, and it's got kind of solid walls, but then it's just trees all around you. So it's like a ring pole shower head, and it's amazing. Yeah. I love it myself.
Yeah. That's fun. And so how far removed from your actual home are they? Like, do they feel like they've got their own space, or as far as accessibility, like, are they on their own kind of in the trees?
They are. Yeah. It's about 350 feet from the house.
Yeah.
So it's a decent ways, and it's got trees all around it. So especially, I mean, in the springtime, you can kind of see the canvas a little bit from the house, but I mean, it's all positioned. We positioned it so it's facing a big, huge ravine. So like you wake up, you're overlooking like this big ravine covered in trees and a little creek running down through it. So
yeah. And what a great experience. Well, obviously we always say we're in the experience business, not the property business, right? And this is one of those ways to really create an experience that people, it's rare, right? It's not that easy to go have that type of an experience. My wife, we had a cabin up by Yellowstone, and it was on a lake, and it was I loved it. It was one of my favorite properties that we ever owned. And then there was this, I think it might've been Under Canvas was the company that had one up by Yellowstone. They had these glamping tents up by Yellowstone. It was maybe 5 or 6 miles from our cabin. And they were charging like a ridiculous amount. Like it was like $800, $900 a night to go sleep in the canvas tent during the summertime. And I'm like, and our cabin was this $1 million cabin, and we were charging $1,500 a night, and they were getting almost the same amount as we were. And I'm like, and Teresa always wanted to go up there and rent those and stay in those instead of our own cabin. And I refused to do it. I never did it. But I was like, I'm not going to go pay $800 a night to stay in a tent when I've got a cabin right down the street. Right. But the point is, she was really attracted to that experience. Right. And I'm sure, like you were mentioning, your guests are like, it's fun. It's exciting. It's like, it's this new experience that they get to go, hang out and really have a kind of it's that luxury type of camping that not everybody has ever been exposed to. So it's just this unique experience. That's really, really fun.
Yeah.
For sure.
And a lot of people will tell me like, hey, I'm the camper, but my spouse isn't. So this is where we can meet in the middle. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard that a lot, actually, from people that want to go camping, and this is and they've got one spouse that's like, no, I'm not camping, I'm not tenting it, I'm getting a hotel or I'm getting a house, and this is kind of that middle compromise, right?
Yep, for sure.
Are you thinking about ever adding more? Does the space allow more? Like, is there reasons you would or wouldn't want to expand with your glamping setups?
I'm trying to buy more land from the guy behind me, but it's complicated. So to say the least, but for our own land, we've thought about it. We have a spot picked out where we could put one. And I have an idea of how I want to do this next one. But there's trade-offs, right? We're like, okay, how much traffic do we want on our own residence, on our own land and stuff, and the driveway and people going up and down the driveway and all these different things, right? So, because we like our privacy too. So,
yeah. So if you had more land, or you had a designated piece of land, you would be interested in, and that's kind of the reason I asked the question is, would you steer toward another, if you had the land, would you steer more toward this business setup, or would you steer more toward, because you guys also have a home that you rent out as well. And so you've kind of played both sides of it, and there's pros and cons, I'm sure, to both sides. Do you lean more toward having regular home that you put in the short-term rental world and building a portfolio that way? Or you lean more toward, hey, this is a pretty fun experience. We get a pretty nice return on that investment if we get the land set up correctly, maybe it's not on your property, maybe it's another piece of property you're trying to acquire or whatever, would there be anything that keeps you away from wanting to run down that road?
I think at this point, we're just open. We really want to hit that goal of an actual vacation property that we get to enjoy and go to a spot.
Yeah.
But the tent right now is the step to help generate some income. So if that was another opportunity where, hey, we got some more property and we can make that happen, and that's another source of income to reach our other goals, I think we're just open at this point.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because we got some other things cooking too, right? So like little things that are trying to make some extra money. And the tent is just known now, and it's easy. And she's got it figured out. Like, she's got it locked in. So easy to clean. It's easy. It's just
right.
Easy. So
how much does the proximity to you guys being close make it easy? Because one of the things, like for me, considering, like if I was like, hey, I like this idea, I've got this land idea, I'm actually under contract on a big piece of property. It's 140 acres in Idaho. The problem is it's an hour away from me, and it would be awesome. It's got a river running through it, everything else. But I'm wondering how much the proximity being close makes it an easy situation versus if you had the same setup that was further away, more remote. The guests are on their own, fairly remote on their own. Would that make a difference on your decision on running down that road?
Yeah, I would say for sure that would make a difference, because right now it is just extremely easy. I just walk out my door, to go clean it. And really, we don't get a lot of issues that the guests need things while they're staying.
Except for like severe weather.
Yeah.
That can be kind of fun sometimes, but
yes. They've had to come into our basement for tornado warnings and that kind of thing. But
you don't want to be in a tent in a tornado,
no,
right? You better.
So
you want to get downstairs in the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, if I was looking at a property and it was further away, that would definitely be a strong consideration of like how much more work and effort is going to go into this.
Right. Is it mostly, and I'm asking these again, like kind of selfishly, but hopefully people listening in, they have some of the similar questions if they're considering this, because a lot of glamping, scenarios are remote properties where at least that's where it starts for a lot of people. They're like, hey, I'm going to get this remote property and we're going to set up a glamping situation on it. If you could dial in, like getting it turned over and cleaned and everything, how much interaction does the actual guest need in those situations? Or is it more logistically getting the turnover if you're not right there?
Yeah, I think it's just the turnover piece.
Yeah,
really,
we rarely interact. So we try to leave them alone. So
which they want. They want that. Guest wants that.
Yep.
I think the piece, like I really like the remote piece. I think each of them have their own pros and cons, right? So like the remote piece sounds super attractive to me, like where it's just like the sky's open, super dark and super quiet, and you're all alone out in the middle of nowhere. Our experience is a little different than that, because while you're surrounded by trees and stuff, you are, 10 minutes from downtown, right? So, and you have access to all the restaurants, whatever you want, right? So,
right.
So it's very different in that way as far as the people that we're attracting, and we get called out by that too, where they're like, "Oh, I really like how close we are to everything," But again, it's just a different experience, and you just got to prepare differently, right? So,
right, and that's a major like kind of upgrade, if you will, to a glamping situation for what you guys have, where they are 10 minutes to restaurants and being able to go downtown and do the shopping or whatever they want to do. Because a lot of glamping situations, one, the tents don't have kitchens in them, right? And so you're not, if you're cooking, you're going to be cooking over an open fire, or maybe you leave a grill out, right? And they're planning for that. But when you can just go to a restaurant and then come back, it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? You get to feel like you kind of feel like you're outdoors, you're in the woods, you're doing your thing. Yet, you got all the niceties of town when you want to go there that are 10 minutes away, which is really pretty nice, and has made it a really good situation for what you guys set up.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I think I mean, if I had the property, it would be very attractive to me. Like I've talked to Melissa a lot of times about, wow, that'd be really cool to have like some sort of event venue with tents and other different types of, unique experiences to sleep in. So, and really just kind of make it a whole thing. So then you could get a big group of people in there and have a really fun experience.
I'm telling you, and that's how this one was up by Yellowstone. It actually had a big barn for events like weddings and stuff. And then all these glamping tents around it. And that's really what their target audience seemed like it was to me, was people would rent out the big barn. You got all the mountains in the background, and then you've got for weddings, and then the whole wedding party and everybody coming in would stay in these glamping tents. I mean, they had probably 30 to 40 of them. They were, it was a whole setup, right? And it was, but so yeah, something to think about, right? Obviously you're staffing that pretty much full time up there. Somebody's up there, doing the turnover and everything else, but it's a pretty fun situation. And I know I got lobbied by my wife to go there all the time. Now I might go. We sold the cabin. So maybe I'll take her up there this summer because we don't have that one anymore.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah. And I appreciate you going through that, because I've always, I get the question all the time, and I've never had a glamping situation. But we've thought about it, and I look at the numbers, and I talk to people like you guys in our Vodyssey family, and we've got, I talk to other people outside of Vodyssey even. And there's a big trade show. I think it's called Glamping USA. Have you seen that one? Every single year in Denver, I think it is.
Yeah, I've seen it. Never been to it yet.
Yeah. And I've seen it, and I've talked to some people that run that, and they were talking to me about kind of the economics and the logistics of setting it up. Are you going to have running water? Are you going to have power? Are you going to have, sewer? How are you going to, composting toilets are a very common thing for glamping situations, but water and power, are you going to have it? Right. Yeah. In some of these areas, if you don't have running water, it's a whole different situation. Right. And so for a lot of people, and so, trying to figure that out and navigate it. But also when you look at the economics of it, and you say, man, you almost get 100% return of your capital, in a year or less sometimes, depending on how long your season is.
Right. And
all of a sudden you're like, okay, this looks pretty attractive. What do you anticipate because I've never, I've asked manufacturers this, but what do you anticipate as just a user, the lifespan of the tent?
Our manufacturer, I think, threw out 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're figuring. So we're getting close to have it.
Yeah. So a couple more years, and you'll look at probably replacing it.
Yeah.
But you've already, when did you get the return of the actual? Because you're not going to have to redo the water lines, the power lines, everything else. When did you actually get a return on the actual tent?
Oh.
Like less than 6 months, a year,
roughly. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the tent was only like $2,500 or something.
Oh yeah, so you're getting a return within months. Yeah, and where you're getting and that's why I love this conversation, because a lot of these conversations are revolving around single family homes, and I appreciate you guys letting me dive deep into this one and asking these questions, because I get these questions all the time, and I'd rather just have it from somebody that's in the game doing it
for sure.
Rather than and letting people listen in on it, and we've. We really thought about that. We're actually, this piece of property that we bought, we're going to build a barn dominium on it. And, but we thought in the meantime, putting some of these tents up, we do have power. We do have water. It would have to be septic out there. We don't have that yet, but there's options for utilities, which is, and this one actually, it's about 10 minutes outside of a really small town, but it's got a couple restaurants and stuff.
Sure.
So they can actually go, eat at some of the restaurants and do some of the stuff. But it's, for me, I'm thinking, man, it's pretty attractive. It would just be summertime. It would probably be a Memorial Day to Labor Day type of a area, but that return can still be there in a short season like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's exciting. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. We're excited about it. We'll see. We're really excited about it. Actually, we got it for owner financing, really low interest rates. It's a really fun deal actually. So we'll have to do a little case study on it when we get it locked up and done.
Yeah. Excited to hear more.
Yeah, for sure. Well, awesome, guys. Well, listen, I always tell me about the, what the plans for the future are. I know you guys were, you mentioned you talked about, maybe expanding the backyard piece and trying to get but that's always up in the air whether your neighbors will sell you more land, right?
Right.
It's like trying to navigate that. What you said you'd love to have one in like a vacation area that you guys are, that you would like to go to and just have more of a traditional vacation home that you can rent out. Is that kind of the next steps, or what are the next steps for you guys?
Yeah, the lake house is still on the list of a desired thing. The problem is, we can go north to Minnesota. There's plenty of lakes, but then other than that, I don't know. The lakes aren't super close to us in Iowa.
Yeah.
So, but for our first one, we do want to stick somewhat close by. So we're always looking, but not actually actively looking right now. But I would say that's definitely a goal still on the list.
Yeah, that's
Nice.
the dream. I think that as far as rental properties go, that would be our next step is the lake house in Minnesota. I think we're both really excited about having one of those.
Yeah. How far is that from you guys? Is it drivable, or you have to jump on a plane?
Oh no, it would be like within 4.5 hours.
Okay. Yeah. So you can, it's a little bit of a drive, but definitely doable.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of my limit. I always, drivable distance is always different thresholds for everybody. I always am like around that 4.5 hours. If it's longer than that, I'm like, okay, I want to fly there.
Yeah.
But there's other people I talk to, they're like, oh no, it's an 8-hour drive. We do it on the weekends. I'm like, what?
Wow.
I'm not doing 8-hour drives on the weekend, but some people do. So I always ask what that threshold is.
Yeah, I'm with you, Shawn. Yeah. I'm in the 4.5 hour, especially for like a weekend or a long weekend, because you don't want to, you don't want to spend all your time. My opinion, you don't want to spend all your time driving.
No way. That's exactly how I feel. And
yeah.
So awesome, guys. Any other last words of advice? And just so you guys know that are listening, we will post the links to go check out these properties. And so the link that I have you guys to Take 10 Rentals, is that the right one to send everybody to?
Yep. Sounds great.
Awesome. And we'll post these in the show notes, so you don't have to remember that. But if you remember it, Take 10 Rentals will show you their properties. You can check out what they've got going. Success always leaves clues, and which is why we have these conversations, why we post the properties, so you guys can kind of reverse engineer them and see what's working and what's not working. And so if you could go back, you've been in it for a minute on the glamping side, whether it's the glamping side or the short-term rental side with traditional home, is there any advice that comes to mind of saying, hey man, I wish I would have known this before I jumped in?
Oh boy.
Well, we've been with you, Shawn, from the very beginning. So I feel like we've had a big step ahead just in that, just being a part of the Vodyssey group. So
right. That does make it nice, right? Leverage somebody else's mistakes so you don't have to make them, right? Grab that baton from somebody else and like help accelerate progress. Right. Yeah. Well, that's anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say always keep improving, and don't be afraid to try new things, to keep improving, to keep upping the amenities, keep upping the experience.
Yeah.
Always keep trying to improve and make it better. So that's one thing we've done with the tent. Like every year we're like, okay, what can we add? What can we change? What can we make better? It's like, what's going to be our thing this year? Because we get repeat customers all the time from the tent, and we only have so many weekends and they're always fully booked. And it's just like, it is what it is. So it's like, how can we up their experience and show them that, we're all in on this and we're all in on your experience and being the best they can be.
I love that. I love it, especially because you guys are always booked, and it would be real easy to just kind of sit on your hands and say, hey, listen, we're already booked. Why do we need to do more? But having the attitude of continuing to raise the bar, continuing to get better and staying ahead of the curve, right? And just continuing to say, hey, listen, we're going to stay the best, but that's why you stay the best. And it's why you are the best and why it's always booked. And but that's not always, it's a common thing from people that win and from people that are operating at a high level. It's not that common. When somebody has success, they will sometimes just sit on their hands and say, hey, listen, we're already booked. There's nothing else I can do to get more occupancy. So I'm just going to sit here. We're good enough. Right. And before you know it, you turn around and somebody passed you by. And by continuing to raise the bar, you kind of mitigate the risk of somebody passing you by because you continue to raise the bar and you continue to push that ball forward more than what other people are willing to do, which is awesome. I love that. And especially because of the business we're in, the experience business and those repeat customers that you continue to get, eventually you pull it off of, you don't even need to work. It becomes a wait list only property, right? It becomes that, hey, listen, this is our customer base and this is who comes and uses it. We don't even need to be on OTAs or anything else like that. Do you even by the way, do you use the OTAs at this stage for that property?
Yeah, we still use Airbnb a lot. That's our primary, and then I have direct bookings as well. But still, at this point, Airbnb is our main booking site.
Still a main source of the guests that are coming in. Awesome, yeah. And I would anticipate that could flip, right, as you continue to get, those weekends continue to book, the repeat customers start to come in, and you do such a good job of staying in touch with them, staying top of mind, communicating with them. You're right about that time frame where that tipping point really starts to happen. A good property usually has a tipping point somewhere around the 3-year mark, where you don't have to rely on the OTAs as much, and it happens really fast. Actually, when you find it, you'll see it. And so I'm interested to keep this conversation going with you guys about when that tipping point happens, because when it happens, it's not like, okay, we're not even really close. Airbnb is getting most of our bookings and we're getting some direct bookings. But as you start to build that customer base, and usually around that 3-year mark, there will be a point where all of a sudden most of your weekends are booked from your repeat customers. And then you start to move away from the OTAs. It happens around that mark. So you guys are really close to that. So I'm excited to see if that holds true with you guys as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I would love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, awesome, guys. Listen, I always appreciate your time and appreciate you allowing other people to listen in on our conversation and allow me to pepper you with 20 questions on glamping and setups and everything else, because I'm, personally kind of navigating that road and thinking about that right now. So I appreciate you letting me just run down mostly that road. I know that we could have talked about a lot of other stuff, but I appreciate that. I appreciate you spending the time on this conversation. Those of you that are listening, we know how valuable your time is, and we do appreciate you spending it with us as well. At the end of these episodes, I ask you 2 favors. The first one is, if you know anybody else, you like these shows, you know somebody else that might like these shows, that would like to walk into the short-term rental game with their eyes wide open. That's ultimately our goal. Share the show. Those things help us. We don't run ads or sponsorships on the show, so the only way it grows is if you guys share it. If you have more than 30 seconds, like it or review it on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And the final, most important thing, I ask you at the end of every episode, is pick that one thing you can do today. Start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website?
Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodyssey.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.